All right, we are back with We Want Winners after the 49ers beat the Arizona Cardinals 45-29 at in Glendale. Not the best performance, and I can say that with a straight face, and this is the same team that put up 45 points. But if you're looking for, something, the defense wasn't, the defense is not healthy right now. There was a couple of things that they probably are going to look at on tape and give Kyle a reason to be mad about something. But otherwise, pretty dominant performance that they put away in the second half. Rod, we are getting into the nitty gritty of the season here. Where do you stand? Are you confident in this team's ability to be dominant? Like I think most of the national experts see the Niners as the clear front runner right now.
Well, I mean, what? Yeah, I would have to agree, partially because of them, and then partially because it seems like the other teams that would be front runners for that title, are going through all kinds of, consternation. Like the Cowboys today, they are clearly a different team when they are away from their home stadium.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's really going on with the Eagles and if it's just a lull or if
They
their
changed
defense,
defensive coordinator today.
yeah, if that is an answer, or if it's just because here's the thing. We had our lull, and I mean, in a 17-week season, it's expected that everybody at some point will have an ebb to their season. And as we came out of ours, so I fully expect teams that I think are good, like the Eagles and the Chiefs, to kind of come out of theirs. I Patrick Mahomes is a monster. But those guys Kadarius Toney, they keep running him out there and he keeps dropping passes. So I don't know how they fix that. So when you look at those type of things, I just think in comparison to everybody else, again, with the caveat, of course, that injuries notwithstanding, because we won the game, like you say, it was fairly dominant, but the Hargrave and Armstead missing was clearly a problem. 200 yards and rushing later. It was an issue. But one hopes that they will both come back and be healthy and productive. I don't know that better teams, if you're playing the Kansas City Chiefs or the Ravens without those two guys in there, that is it's a can of, I was mixing metaphors there. it's a horse of a different color. Of course, as the games mean more and whatnot, you want to have those guys in there. But other than that, I mean, if all things being equal, I think we are the most dominant team and have the highest ceiling in terms of if we're hitting on all cylinders and we don't turn the ball over and we aren't hurt. I think that I like our chances.
This is setting up a giant week. What is it? Week 16 game between the Niners and the Ravens. Christmas night. The Ravens are currently let's see. What are they? 10-3?
They are. I think they're atop of the AFC right
they're
now.
top of the AFC. The Dolphins are 10-4. And then the Niners are obviously now 11-3. So it's a huge game, and it's one that, what great scheduling for the NFL to put this game on, great luck as well. But, I'm not a person, I kind of hate being the team that's supposed to win it all, because you only have a place to fall. You don't have a place to rise. And so I say this by also being really afraid of what this even means, but they look like the team to beat right now. As we know, when it comes to the tournament, football is brutal, and you are a Trent Williams knee injury away, missing out on your best player. But I'm gonna say something that I don't usually say as adamantly as I do. I see my buddy Ben Cruz just joined the chat. Ben works at the Ringer. Rod and I have lots of love for the Ringer. Kyle, turn the TikTok camera on. No, that's so. I'm gonna say it right now. I think Brock's the MVP, and I think he's gonna win it. Dak struggled today, but it's not even really about Dak struggling, and it's not about maybe Josh Allen putting together a great 3 weeks or Mahomes putting together a great 3 weeks. Here's what it is to me. They have a great director and a great lead actor. Kyle Shanahan is in his absolute bag right now. There were 2 plays today where Debo and CMC were so wide open. And think about that. CMC is tied with Radio Raheem for leading in touchdowns. So wide open. Debo, so wide open. And this is all play calling and just knowing how to weave a game plan in and out. And so you have that with Kyle. And now we have I think we have to talk about it. Steven Ruiz doesn't like Brock's arm talent. It's clear, and he's not going to. And Justin Herbert is still going to be ahead of him in these quarterback rankings. But and I say that as a joke because I understand the gimmick, and it's a great gimmick, by the way. Steven Ruiz gets so much attention for this. But when it comes to the ability for the quarterback to run the plays that the play caller is calling with the great talent around him, Brock is almost playing perfect football at this point. He didn't have as gaudy of a completion percentage game as he has been. 16 of 25, 242, 4 touchdowns. There were 2 others that may have been there. Ayuk got a ball tipped right in front of him, and then there was another one where I think he just misstepped in reading the ball that could have been big plays. So it could have been even bigger. But I'm calling it. I think Brock's going to win the MVP. I think the story of him and Shanahan, like think of Montana and Bill Walsh. Like Montana doesn't become Montana without Bill Walsh, not only the GM, but the play caller and the head coach. Like there is a system here that is fascinating to watch. And I think for the first time all season, I'm ready to say that, Brock maybe runs this better than all but a couple of quarterbacks in the NFL right now.
Yeah, he didn't get my MVP vote because he didn't hit his over today. So, to hell with Brock. No, just playing. Yeah, he played really well today. I would have liked to have had him hit that 252, but
it was there, and then they pull him with like 7 minutes left or whatever.
Killed me, and they probably gonna run the ball anyway. But yeah, it was. Yeah, he is operating at a very high level, and call it what you want, because I happen to agree actually with some of the comments that were made this week. I mean, if you want to make him the MVP, I mean, he has a very good case. But I think it's also that can be the case, and it can also be true that this is not a get on my back boys type of scenario here. He's not carrying this team by any stretch of the imagination. He's doing his job. He's making all his layups, and he makes the spectacular play when necessary. And that's all he has to do. He doesn't need to put the team on his back. And throw 40 balls or do any of those things that we have traditionally, because let's be fair, this is the first time when you talk about an MVP candidate, I can't ever remember a time when you are making a case for an MVP candidate with percentages and ratios. There is usually that quarterback is, being dominant in the counting stats, the yards, the touchdowns, the number of completions. Brock's candidacy is, you hear it's QBR and it's passer rating and it's all of these, esoteric advanced stat um cases, which to me is it's fine because I love advanced stats, but it's funny to hear 49er fans who in the past, when I have used advanced stats to make any kind of argument, I don't look at the stats. I
Yeah,
look at the,
because you're
I
like,
look at
hey,
on
Jimmy, he keeps checking down. That's why his completion percentage is so high.
so I get it. This award is usually the best quarterback on the best team,
Yep.
or the best, the quarterback of the best team. And I guess I'm with you in that I can see the path to Brock being MVP. And I can, if they make Christian McCaffrey the offensive player of the year, then I would be satisfied, because if I had a vote, I'd vote for Christian McCaffrey, and I think he's the most valuable player on this team and in the league. But that would be a nice concession. If you can give Brock the MVP, but you give CMC the offensive player of the year, that's fine. I'll take it.
But it's also a narrative award, and I'll steal something that Bill Simmons also says, mostly talks about from the NBA. But you want these awards to tell the story of the regular season, and the best story to me in the regular season is the 49ers kind of as the juggernaut, as hitting on all cylinders. Now, to us, we believe that the most valuable player is probably Trent Williams, just because we see what happens to that team when he is missing. Now, the quarterback has a ton of responsibility. Brock has tremendous amount of weapons. He's going to get demerited for that. But you know who else? And I'm not comparing these guys necessarily, because I don't think that the correlation, or that this is a sort of a parallel situation. When Steph Curry won his first MVP award in 2015, all of the naysayers, aka LeBron fans, were just adamant that it was the system, it was the openness in which they could play, it was having Klay Thompson next to him to attract some of the defense. It could not have been Steph, because Steph had an embarrassment of riches when it came to the offensive personnel that the Warriors had. And then, when you get KD, then it's even worse to that narrative. Brock Purdy, like you said, he's doing what he is supposed to do. But we know what that looks like when the quarterback is not doing what he's supposed to do, because we saw Jimmy. As much as I liked Jimmy and rooted for Jimmy, there's a clear divide in some of these plays, like that back shoulder throw to Debo in the end zone. Jimmy's sailing that ball into the crowd because he doesn't trust his arm that he's going to put that on the money for risk of making a mistake. And look, Brock's he did not have a perfect game. There was a couple of passes that could have gotten tipped or intercepted or whatever. But to me, it's really the calculations in his brain. Like, you see his eyes. Okay, move. Nope. I could dump it off to CMC, but there's actually something happening down the field, and that is the better play. And his ability to do that in microseconds has been absolutely fantastic. So while the quarterback is always going to get the most credit, because the NFL is a quarterback's league, I don't want to demerit Brock for what every quarterback gets just because he doesn't have the Aaron Rodgers arm. Now, the other thing about it, and I think this is a valid argument. We haven't seen a ton of adversity yet. He has not had to come back and bring the team back from a game that that they are behind in. Like that. That's just not how the Niners have played really this year. The 3 losses were, that they probably should have won that Cleveland game.
And
but
the Minnesota game, you could make a case.
You can make a case for both of those games. Now, the Bengals games, they I think they just got whipped. But, Brock didn't get it in the end zone, leaves it in the hand of the rookie kicker, and the rookie kicker missed. So, and then Brock had a terrible Minnesota game. So that adversity piece, that may be the reason why people don't vote for him, is there. And I think that's a valid argument. But at the same time, he hasn't really been put in those scenarios often. And it may happen in the playoffs. He's going to have to win a game for the team. They're not going to win every single game by 20 points, especially come, the NFC Championship and those kind of games. So there is opportunity there, and there will be naysayers there. But as far as what we have in these 14 games so far in the league, I think the narrative award, I think the trophy is his, unless something happens and they just lose these next 3 games or whatever. But I just think it's there. And I'm a little bashful when I brought this up a couple of weeks ago because I wasn't sure, but I'm pretty sure now that he is a deserving MVP winner if that's where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think 2 things can be true, and that's, again, my frustration with our fan base is they can't acknowledge, they have a refusal to acknowledge that the supporting cast matters. I don't think, but at the same time, while I say that, I don't think that he should be dinged, or that should be a mark against him that he has a all-pro stable of weapons. But so 2 things can be true. That is, he shouldn't be discredited for that. But at the same time, to make the argument that doesn't matter is nonsense. Of course it does. He would not be the same quarterback on the Chicago Bears. It matters. But he is still playing well, which, like you say, I think is the great delineation between Yimmy and him, is that you could make all these arguments about Jimmy as quarterback because and every argument started and ended with team numbers and team success, because there was no argument that he as an individual player was doing anything spectacular. That's not the case with Brock. He's making plays and he is doing things that if you just isolate his performance, he is performing at a really, really high level. And that, is it's noteworthy and worth praise and appreciation. But also it doesn't hurt that his play, like you say, his play caller is balling out of his mind, calling plays.
It's the best I've ever seen him. It's tremendous.
His weapons are top of the league. All of them. I mean, when you're in a situation where somebody like George Kittle is not getting touches, but we know he is a top of the food chain weapon, but it's just the ball can only go so many places, and somebody like George, doesn't get the shine in the way that we know he is literally he's one. He can be a top 5 weapon if he is your 1A. He's really, really in that Debo CMC mode. We saw it. You can play him at the X. You can play him in the slot. He can line up. He's got lineup versatility. He's probably not a running back, but in the receiving game, he is just as versatile as any of as Debo and CMC are, and he is like the fourth wheel right now, which
he might have had upwards of 70 something yards receiving if he didn't drop that one that I thought was a fumble. I
yeah.
was like,
I
what?
mean, people were shitting on Darnold, but both of those passes could have been caught. Now,
Yeah.
and coming off the bench like that, he's got to get into the rhythm of the game. But I know for sure that second one was a flat out drop. But
He ripped that one right into. I think that one
that
Kittle had
dude
like
has
burn marks on his fingers.
yeah, but yeah, it was it is an embarrassment of riches. But again, like I say, that doesn't diminish Brock playing his role to the highest level. Like I call him a point guard, and that is not it's not pejorative at all. He does an excellent job of surveying the field and making the best decision. Like you say, there are times when somebody, other quarterbacks we've had in the past would just take the check down, but he doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Not that the check down would be a bad decision. It's just that if he sees something where he could get a little bit more, he's not afraid to go try and get it. And he's playing loose enough that, and he's playing from an advantage in that the team is so good that he can risk making, if it turns out to be a mistake, it's not gonna kill us. So I think that aggressiveness is in the long run a good thing, even if you might question the decision, and it might be that the check down might have been the right decision and the deeper pass was a riskier decision. I think that we've got the margin for error, especially in games like this where the risky decision is not going to kill us. Now, again, as we come and we go further along and games are closer, that's why I'm a big believer in process over result. That sometimes, there might be a time where that riskier pass might not be the appropriate decision if the game is if we're playing a much tighter game. So those are little things, but yeah, I'm Brock is balling, man. He is playing really, really well.
And I got a marketing idea for Curry Brand. First football athlete, Brock Purdy. Get him out of them Spalding cleats or whatever he's wearing right now. I actually don't know what he's wearing. But yeah, I think he fits that Curry underrated brand as well. All right, let's talk a little bit more about this game. And the reason to not really dig too deep into the weeds here is because you're talking about an Arizona Cardinals team that is from a talent standpoint, these two teams are in opposite directions. I mean, they have a couple of good guys who can catch the ball. I guess McBride is technically a tight end, but he was 10 for 102 today, and he made some pretty good plays. But they also have a lot of guys who I'm just looking at this roster going like, okay, that guy was on a different team 2 years ago. That guy was on a different team 2 years ago. James Conner, he's a pretty good football player, and he kind of torched the Niners a little bit up the middle. Same with DeMarcado. But, Kyler is Kyler, and he was going to keep it interesting for as long as it was going to be interesting. And
he looks to be back. He looks to be healthy.
Yeah, he looked okay. He made 2 throws that I'm sure he would like back, and Mooney snatched both of them things out of the air. It's funny because last week when we were both at the game, Mooney had that opportunity. I think it was on the sideline to for the interception, and my kid was like, "Oh my God!" right in his hands, and I was like, "Yeah." And last week, the week before, Mooney had said he needs to hit the jugs machine because he's dropping all of these possible picks, and maybe that's what he did because he snatched both of those balls out of the air so that he could catch it in stride and run like that. They were 2 great interceptions.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was not a game where I don't think any 49er fan was kind of worried, or kind of, I know that announcers are trying to sell it like, oh, this is not over. And I was like, it's not over, but it's not as close as they're trying to keep it as well. And like we said before, the announcers are trying to make sure that the fans stick around and not turn it off.
I'm not. I didn't. I was. The game was never obviously out of hand, but I was a bit concerned after that first drive. I mean, they kind of just went straight down the field on us. And again, my worst fears realized was that we were going to be Swiss cheese in the middle without Hargrave and Armstead, and it kind of came into fruition, but it didn't ultimately impact the
I don't like seeing Kinlaw just on the floor. Like,
yeah,
this dude is too big and too strong to be on the floor. So
you notice that too. He's on the ground a lot. Like falling, just flopping around out there on the ground. And like you say, when all he has to do, you would think, would be just stay, in a stance. I mean, there's nobody not gonna move him. It's just, but you gotta stay upright. You can't be falling all over the place. But yeah, that is a concern.
Okay, you want to know what my main concern was? Mm-hmm. It was I think it was in the third quarter. After the play, Randy Gregory shoves an offensive lineman right into the back of Nick Bosa's heel. Oh. And my immediate thought was Achilles tendon is like the single worst injury from that perspective. And but Nick was I think he was even back maybe the next play. But that was the only like real worry for me watching that game, was because it was like one of those games where I'm like, yeah, Cardinals are going to pick up some garbage yards. I got to be okay with that. Mm-hmm. The Niners aren't going to play this, they're not playing with the same intensity as if, this was a super close game. So that stuff's going to happen. Kyler's just going to make things happen. He's
going to make plays. Yeah.
And he does that to us. He plays us just about as good as anybody else does in the league. So, but offensively, they were just able to hit big plays. See, I was saying that CMC, this was like right from the beginning of the game in our Discord. I mentioned that, it just looks like if they wanted to, and I did not want to see this, but if they wanted to make CMC the workhorse, he could have got 200 yards. Just their run defense is so poor. And I think I saw the stat was like they were 31st in the league or something. They could have done that, but they were also finding ways to attack them through the air. And CMC had he had a quiet 115 on 18 carries, but it was really through the air that he picked up a chunk too. 5 for 72 with 2 touchdowns. He had 3 touchdowns. It's just a ho-hum 3 touchdown game for CMC here.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I don't really think. I know that our fan base as a whole doesn't really appreciate Kyle Shanahan. They don't give him his proper due as a play caller. Now, again, I've said many a time, and I still kind of stand on that sometimes I don't know about him running the team necessarily. Is some kind of questionable things that he does.
Well, but look, he's gonna have that monkey on his back until he holds a lead in a big game, right? Like that's the reputation, is inability to hold a lead in a big game as the head coach and getting the team to finish out that fourth quarter. Like that's, once that happens, then maybe that monkey is off his back, but it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, but that aside, as a play caller and play designer, I'm not one for the hyperbole, but I mean, it's kind of Walsh-like. I really believe that, 40 years on down the road, Bill Walsh, the West Coast offense is the foundation of every offense from Pee Wee football up to the NFL. And it would not shock me if some of the things that Kyle Shanahan is pioneering kind of like his father. Same thing with Mike Shanahan's offense. 25 years on. You can see a lot of the Shanahan offense, the Mike Shanahan offense in NFL playbooks. I just think that Kyle is forging that same kind of resume with the coaches that are in his tree and in just the innovation of his offense. I mean, I don't believe that's hyperbole. He is one of the best, definitely in the game today, one of the best offensive minds in the game today, if not the best. And historically, I think we're far enough along to say that he is historically one of the most significant. You have to, it don't have to stand the test of time. He could end up being the Mouse Davis of the of the 2000s, but I
to
doubt it.
run and shoot.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that a lot of the things that we are seeing are going to end up being foundational offensive strategies moving forward. I mean, he is a brilliant dude. And I like you, I think taking from your comments, I feel it's a pleasure to watch him work, especially when he is like he's in his bag like he was today. I mean, that dude, like you say, that one to CMC is one of those ones where you're like scared, you're like so wide open that it's like, oh shit, I don't want to drop this because I mean, there's nobody around him, and it's like that was kind of funny that Brock did what they say you're supposed to do in no circle. He gave it plenty of air so that it could kind of just fall down to him. But it's like those are ones I've seen plenty of dudes drop those because it's such a layup that you start to get self-conscious and you can miss it. But yeah, that was awesome. And then like you say, the one to Debo was the same. The dude is just making some awesome calls. So yeah, it's a pleasure.
Well, we listened to that one podcast series that Jordan Rodriguez did. Was it called Playmakers or something like that? And like you don't realize until it's laid out what his tree is like and what his influence is like. And I mean, just look at what the Dolphins are doing. Like that is directly correlated with Kyle Shanahan relationship right there. And it's amazing.
McVay, LaFleur, O'Connell in Minnesota. I mean, all of those guys are directly from his tree. And I mean, as this moves on, those guys are going to create guys. And yeah, it is, and it all, they were talking about that. I was listening to some podcasts. They were talking about that, everybody kind of wants to, when the hiring cycle comes around, everybody kind of wants a piece of the Kyle Shanahan tree. Everybody wants, an offensive guy outside of, I guess Ben Johnson will be a hot candidate to Detroit offensive coordinator this cycle, but everybody else seems to be trying to get Shanahan guy or, guys who are related, LaFleur guys or McVay guys. And I'm sure Mike McDaniel is going to be getting his staff rated pretty soon here, because that's another dude that is a really, really, you watch them play. I spend a lot of time, I call them Niners Southeast. So
I mean, that's the poetic Super Bowl, right? Like if you wanted to write that story, that's the Super Bowl that you could really market.
But that would make me so sad because I really, really root for that guy, McDaniel, but we gotta crush him.
I know.
I would hate to lose to him. I want every good thing for him except when he's playing against us.
I know. I love Radio Raheem too. God, that guy's so fast.
Yeah.
All right.
At 31 years old, that's crazy.
And and as dinged up as he has been too. All right. So if folks who are watching have any thoughts on this, I'm looking for a Rod's player of the game. I think if you're gonna do a top, we almost should do a top 5 because there's like so many contributors. But I think if we do a top 3, the only thing that I have to kind of quibble with in my own standings is kind of Debo versus CMC for my 3rd spot. And
Wow.
to say that CMC 18 for 115 yards, 5 for 72 receiving, 3 touchdowns, just all over the field offensively. To have him as my 3rd guy is kind of nuts. I have Mooney as my 2 guy, my number 2 guy. And I have Brock as 1, and I haven't really had Brock as number 1 many times this year because we keep talking about, a lot of the weapons that they have. And not that this was the best Brock game I've ever seen, but I just go back to the feeling I had when he got his shoulder hit. And this is how much I know that I like that guy now. My stomach dropped. I was like, what are we going to do now? And you and I both like Sling and Sammy Darnold. We both would love to see what he could do with this kind of team. But Brock is running this offense so perfectly that my stomach it was almost like I was related to him. I was so sad for that 2 seconds that he was on the ground and he was back up. But I think, just the level of confidence I have in him as a fan, in his ability to do his job is just higher than it's ever been for me. So Brock was my number 1.
Okay. Well, let me tell you how ridiculous I am. Is that I thought when that initially went down, I was hoping for a concussion because what I didn't want it to be was something with his shoulder.
Or shoulder, elbow, arm, like something where he's out for the season.
I was like, if it's a concussion, woo, that's which is awful, for him. But a concussion, you can come back from a concussion, but anytime those dudes get hit up around their collarbone,
because collarbone is like a long injury.
Like, oh no, this could be bad. But when they went over to the sideline and he went to the blueprint and they pointed out that the concussion dude wasn't in there, I was like, oh shit, is this really gonna be something bad? So I was really relieved when he came back out. But I kind of do it offensive and defensive. And I went CMC, and primarily the tiebreaker for me is that Brock didn't cover. So, so if he had got 10 more yards, we'd be having a different conversation. But and then I think Mooney was the most impactful defensive player. Taking into account that again, the caveat always that Nick is pretty easy every week. If you wanted to go that way every week, it's hard to make an argument. But I thought Travarius, obviously with his takeaways, he sealed it, and it's really good to see him establishing himself and talking that talk. He was talking that talk this week about feeling like he's a top 5 cornerback. And I don't know, but I love to hear him say it. Go ahead, talk your talk, man. And he's clearly the best number 1 corner we've had around here in a good long while. And again, I know I'm very aware of the stats, and we aren't a great man-to-man team, and you probably like your cornerback 1 to be better in man-to-man. But our defensive coordinator does a good job of not necessarily putting them in those positions to do things that they can't do. But so I'm gonna ride with him. If he say he's top 5, he's top 5. So let's go. So he's my defensive player of the game.
So Shelvin has Brock, Debo, CMC, and Mooney as well in his list. As we sort of look forward to these last 3 games, I think it's interesting the way that the schedule breaks out and the way that the current standings are, because the Niners kind of sort of are gonna, if they want that first round bye, they're gonna have to win these games. And next week's game is in no way a gimme because the Ravens are a really good team. The Ravens have actually given up less points than us, though. I think they play tonight.
They play tonight.
Okay, so there's a possibility if they were to give up, 16 points, then they'd be tied with us for points against. Now the Niners offense has scored more, but the Ravens, they don't give up a lot of points. They have a quarterback that scares me to no end, just on the other side, in Lamar Jackson. So there's no way a gimme. But with Dallas losing, the Eagles play the Seahawks Monday night, and I guess Hurts he's ill or he's got the flu or something, so he's questionable. But I don't know if you can rest these guys.
So the Dallas game is huge because we are now like basically 2 full games ahead of them. So
because we beat them,
right? But the Eagles, I think after tonight, they've got like the Giants twice, and then maybe like the Patriots or something weird. They will most likely win out, which means we have to continue winning. So that brings up an interesting point because I was going to ask you, where do you fall on? Let's say the Eagles lose again, so we have a cushion. Where do you fall on? We got Washington and the Rams the last 2 weeks of the season. Where do you fall on if theoretically we were able? I don't think even mathematically we could actually even sew it up because we are so close to the Eagles. Where do you fall on resting dudes?
The tricky thing is if the Niners don't get the bye, I'm very comfortable with Brock not even playing in week 17 and week 18. Some of these other guys who, you want to, as Sheldon said, put them in bubble wrap because it's only 1 week, right? But if you do have the bye,
right,
then that's 2 weeks. And I think that could screw with some stuff. So in that sense, if they wrap up the bye, it's almost like you don't want to sit those guys because you don't want them to lose, any sort of rhythm or whatever. So that I think is the tricky thing. I mean, it's a great problem to have. It's a great problem to solve because that's what you're shooting for, especially in this game where the whole thing is about keeping folks healthy. But yeah, that's a decision, and I would be interested in what Shanahan thinks about that when it comes to the rest. CMC did bang up his knee a little bit, and my thought was, let's kind of get ahead of this thing so we could pull him and let JP run back there, which they were able to do, like mid fourth quarter or whatever. So, but those are the guys you're worried about. You're worried about Trent, right? Trent holding up for the whole season. That was a nasty ankle. I don't know if that dude has like steel plates in his foot or something, because he's been able to come back on a high ankle sprain or whatever that was. This is a tough guy. But at the same time, once you get into the playoffs, it's a game a week. Sometimes based on the schedule, you may only have 6 days. And so, just because of they're trying to benefit the best for television. So I would lean towards health. So maybe that means, Brock plays a quarter, but then again, you got Aaron Donald running around after him.
Yeah. But I think I don't know. I think the huge thing is he's still a young player. So I don't think you can shut him down. I think he needs to go through a week of preparation and he needs to play. But then how do you, as I sit here and say that, then how do you like put Sam Darnold in 2 quarters in if he hasn't had any prep time because you gave Brock all the reps? So I don't know. I think that there is something to be said for keeping a rhythm to how he prepares and how he goes into the game. And how do you do that and maintain an edge if you like know you're only going to play a half? I mean, it's going to be an interesting number one, like you say, it would be a good problem to have,
Yeah.
just to see if that even comes to pass. Because if the Eagles keep winning, we have to keep winning. So
Yes.
those games aren't just gimme. We can't just throw our helmets out there, and because how would it suck to like lose to the Commandos or the Rams,
Well,
and
and think about the physicality which may take place next week. You may not have a full squad for the Commanders game.
right.
So that's, the way that this
And
thing
again, the
worked
more
out.
the more you start plucking pieces away, like today, it didn't end up being an issue, but you take your two starting interior defensive linemen away, it compromises you. I mean,
Yeah.
who we not gonna that team is not gonna get 200 yards rushing on us if we're fully healthy. But you
I think it was a
take
40 game record. Wait, let's see.
mhm,
What was the
something like
final
that.
what was the final stats? Okay, so they didn't allow a 100-yard rusher. It was DeMercado who scored the touchdown. So Connor actually didn't go over 100, but I think there's a stat that I want to say it was Barrows tweeted that the last time they gave up a 100-yard rusher was Justin Fields, and I don't know how many games ago that was.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, so things like that, it's just like you say, I hadn't really even thought about that, but you brought it up that, it doesn't take much more attrition. We don't know where Armstead and Hargrave are. And then I can guarantee you, I've watched a lot of Baltimore Ravens, and they are a physical bunch. So
Yep.
that's gonna be a slobber knocker game. And you lose one or two more guys, and then all of a sudden you're kind of comparable. We go back to what we were talking about in the beginning, that we are the best team when healthy. But if you take three or four guys, starters out of the lineup, all of a sudden, this is not it's not nearly the gimme that it should be. And that, Washington is not a very good team, but Bieniemy and Howell are able to push the ball down the field. I don't know if he still is, but at one point, Howell was like leading the league in passing yards.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's it it's so cliche to say any given Sunday, but it's true. I mean, you can't go into, and that was the thing coming out of that Eagle game that was my only, that's really injuries. And then my only other concern was that we get some kind of air of entitlement that we got it all figured out and that we're just going to be able to go out there and throw our jocks out on the field, and these dudes, we just going to beat these dudes. And that's just, the NFL is just not like that. We are good, but all it takes is a turnover here, an injury there, and then you know the sorry team is in the game. You see it every week where teams that don't have any business at all, being competitive in a game are right there in the fourth quarter. So I mean, in the NFL, you can never count anything as good, but I'm hoping that we are able to strike some kind of balance going down the stretch. And I guess if we, like you say, if we get the bye, it's not necessarily as big a deal because regardless, you're going to end up getting a full week off,
Mhm.
basically.
Like a second bye.
Yeah, but it would be nice to be in a position in those in week 17 and 18 to not have, just because of the fact that the 53-man rosters, it's just impossible to like put in entire second teams. Some of your frontline players have to play. It's just, the numbers dictate that some of them are going to be out there. But if you could be in a situation where you could rotate them and, you know, get everybody decreased reps in those last 2 weeks, like you said, it would be nice to be as fresh as possible going into the playoffs. Let guys get those little dings and dents kind of just get refreshed.
Yeah.
And not having guys playing 60 and 70 snaps a game. Hopefully we can be in a position where we're able to do that.
Now, I know we're still 8 days away from Christmas, but maybe this is a little bit too late, but if I could ask Santa for something, can we get Ray back?
Oh,
Ronnie Bell, aka BBD,
killing us right
oh
now.
my gosh, I thought he was going to get cut right on the field. If that was a fumble, I was like, oh, he's getting cut. Someone's coming off the P squad to
wasn't Kyle Williams 10? Maybe he just needs a number change.
Yeah, change that number.
Yeah, that was pretty rough there. But yeah, I don't know, man. And Ndamukong Suh is still out there. That old dude can give us some reps on the interior. Even when those other guys get back there, my feeling is that he could be like what Randy Gregory is to the defensive ends. He could be that for the defensive interior. You're not asking him to play 40, 50 snaps, but he can give you a good 20 to 25.
I don't know, man. Him and Dre on the same defense with them referees. The referees just looking for those guys.
You talk about their head would explode. It would be awesome. But yeah, I just still think that defensive interior is a concern.
Yeah.
And nothing that we saw today has allayed my concerns at all. Kevin Givens and Javon Kinlaw had been playing really well, but it just seems to me he might have cost himself some money. It doesn't appear that he's going to be a front line. He's a good rotational piece, but he had a chance today, to come in and establish himself and make himself some money at the end of the season. I just don't think he did that, flopping around on the ground the way he was.
I can just see, like, if we don't get Ray back, Debo's just gonna be like, wait,
Yeah.
you want me to return kicks and punts now? Like, what? He's like, yeah.
Where the hell is Danny Gray? Seriously, that's a serious question. I know he
can't get on the field.
I know he was on the IR for a bit, but I thought his window opened, and I haven't heard anything. That's crazy. Especially with BBD doing his thing, and then Ray, and I didn't hear anything this week about where Ray is in terms of close to being back. As long as he's ready for the playoffs, I guess that's the most important thing. Because as we talked about it, I guess I'm not super concerned. I know, I saw that.
Did they steal it? I didn't hear it.
He did. Yes, he did.
So Shelvin who's in the chat said, I think the broadcast stole the BBD nickname. I didn't hear it. I would have popped. I would have been so excited.
Yeah, they certainly did. But yeah, it's a underrated thing, but good on you to bring it up. It's hella important, man. Mess around. Well, again, we've seen it. I guess Kyle Williams, we saw it. We saw us boot the game away, an NFC Championship game away. Alex wasn't the greatest that day either.
No,
but yeah, the 2 fumbles did not help at all.
Oh,
so yeah, it's important. We really can't. Hey man, just catch the ball.
The Discord, I thought, was about to give him a standing ovation when he made the fair catch.
just do that. You don't have to just from the jump. Just once you run out on the field, call it a fair catch.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we're gonna try and be back on Christmas evening. It's probably gonna be, so that game is a late game. Yeah. So the game's probably ending at 8:30. So we're probably not going to be able to even get on until 10-ish. I know, which is late for some folks, but we'll at least get it in. And if you can't join us on the YouTube channel, we'll have the audio in the BSPN podcast channel, the podcast network for audio. So, but we will be back to talk about that game. I mean, I don't want to overstate that game, but man, for a late season game, that's this is like an early preview to what the playoffs are going to be like.
I want to go ahead and give us a shout out right now.
All right, go for it.
When you talk about Christmas Day, man, we do a hell of a job being here 18 weeks. Have we missed in the last 2 years?
We've
had to adjust times.
Yeah, we had to.
When I was in Mexico City, I wasn't here, but my
buddy Mike, jumped on with us.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that is awesome that because life happens and things happen, but we seem to make it happen. Because for me, it's important. I enjoy this hour we spend together, chopping it up about what we just watched. So yeah, good on us, man.
Yeah, no, hey man. Sometimes half of it is just showing up.
Yep.
All right. Thanks to everyone for who joined into the chat and was checking us out on Twitter and YouTube. And we'll be back next week on Christmas evening. And I'm just crossing my fingers that we get out of that game, win or lose, without a bunch of injuries. That's kind of my thoughts. So, all right, for Rod, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.